This episode is brought to you by Dot Space.
In this special episode, we're going to show you around our Never Too Small studio. We name it NTS Space. This is where we produce our most loved content, especially for you. Of course, we're going to talk about the design. So we have architect Ben Edwards and Nancy Baker from Studio Edwards, who designed this beautiful space for us. Ben and I met about 4 years ago, and in fact, his micro-luxe apartment was featured on our very first Never Too Small episode. Ben and I became really good friends, and their old studio used to be a block behind ours. So we decided to get them to design our NTS space for us. Are we friends?
Yes, most definitely.
Imagine if Never Too Small was a book. Stop imagining. Visit nevertoosmall.com.
NTS Space is located in Collingwood, which is really close to Melbourne CBD.
There's lots of design studios around, there's some great bars, cafes, galleries, and other architects as well, which is nice.
It's super diverse and I think very culturally rich and artistically rich. So there's a lot of warehouse conversion happening in Collingwood, one of it being the NTS space.
What's your first impression when we first asked you guys to design the space for us?
It was like a blank canvas. It was this shell with beautiful high ceilings, all the services, all the kind of guts basically are visible.
We told you what we need is really an open space studio so we can interact with each other easily, but we also want to provide a bit of privacy for us.
We decided to put 4 pods within the open space, so allowing space for people to circulate freely, with one of these pods being movable.
We dedicated this first pod at facing the main entrance to our producers and researchers. And next to the first pod, there's a waiting area. We keep this waiting area quite simple with a pair of restored mid-century chairs, and above it we have some model buildings made by one of our talented neighbours at Redmond, who made these incredible laser-cut bamboo flat-pack models under his brand Gin and Apathy. He takes on some custom projects too.
Each pod is 3.6 metres deep by 2.8 metres wide, fitting 4 people to work in comfortably.
We dedicated this pod to our production team. Our editor Jess, our content creator Nam, and myself sit here.
NTS Space won 4 awards in sustainability and workplace design.
That was right at the forefront of our design thinking, what can we do using the least amount of stuff? Because it's essentially a leasehold space, something that then can be taken apart if it needs to. It's something that can be changed, it can evolve.
There's pretty much 2 parts to it. There's the frame and then these panels that just essentially slide in. Nothing's bolted to this warehouse. With the help of just a steel fabricator to put together the steel framing, the rest of it was done essentially by hand.
How many materials we have to build a pod?
I think just 4 materials. Steel, the recycled OSB panels, acoustic panel and the tables.
The OSB panels, they're all exactly the same size as when you get them from the timber yard, so they're 1.2 metres by 2.4. All the steel members vertically were 2.4, which meant that we didn't have to cut them.
The OSB lining is sort of whitewashed white paint, the idea being that we could give each sort of tenant a very blank canvas to begin with.
Painting them white, I think, just allows light to bounce around and so that you have a nice ambient working light on the inside. All of the pods have all been painted white apart from one. I think that's just partly a reflection of us as well. Like that whole idea of going to a dinner party and all the chairs matching gives me a panic attack. So it's almost nice to have just something to break up that kind of idea of everything has to be the same.
This pod is where we will record our future podcast episodes, and also a hot desk where we can work on laptop. There's a fun little side table from Melbourne furniture brand Dow Jones. And there are 2 paintings in the pod. One of them is from Auckland-based artist Toby Rain, and the other one is Sydney artist Bellum Ladd.
I think the OSB softens the coldness of the steel. It provides something a bit more tactile. We have these operable panels to each side of the pod so that you can open it to allow things like light in, but also socialising or interaction with one another.
And if you're working in there without having to go out through the kind of main entry point, is to be able to kind of nip out the side. The other thing is also the idea that these pods could be moved. So if they were moved, you could put them all next to each other and have another route all the way through the middle of them through these sliding doors. So it was sort of allowing for maximum reconfiguration as well. Pets can kind of move through there.
Yeah, definitely. Our office dogs love it. They just run around in between pods.
Yeah, and I think it was a way to connect into these infill sort of social spaces.
Between our middle pod and also the podcast pod, we dedicated this area into a cozy reading nook. So when we need a bit of time off, we can just hang out there or just dip into a good book. We have a second-hand chair I found at the flea market a couple of years ago. We have a little cute cushion from Melbourne brand Omari and also a second-hand floor lamp. But the star in this corner is this beautiful painting by Barnard, a favorite artist for many of us in Never Too Small.
Part of the design took into consideration the ceiling panel not being a fixed ceiling that enclosed the whole pod. The underside of those OSB panels had recycled PET acoustic panels to dampen some of the sound between each pod.
It hopefully gives the impression they're kind of floating on the top of the pod. Using industrial materials such as steel, it can be quite harsh. I think the yellow is energising and uplifting, and it's fun. We learned a lot about spray painting over the course of this one. Yeah.
Accidentally maybe painted the whole warehouse, but yellow's a really nice colour.
In our meeting pod, we have this folky, funky Vista Holograph vase, which is my personal favourite. In the kitchen area, before this is pretty dull, so we spice it up with a simple shelving from our friends at Plyroom. And we also have this very quirky and playful artwork from Frank Goya. Alongside with Toby's, Ballum's and Elizabeth's painting, this can be seen at the wonderful James Mackin Gallery just around the corner from us.
Part of the consideration for these pods is that they also need to be something that could be kind of closed down at night or for privacy. And so the idea of an operable blind that you could use or operate very easily from your phone to close the pods off, as well as to potentially filter the light. You can also project onto it or use it as a screen.
We wanted the lighting to be discreet and integrated within the design. So between each of the beams there's diagonal bracings, and sort of to the underside of that is where we housed some LED strips.
Sphera Lighting, who are just down the road, helped us develop this idea for some LED linear lights. They were highly intelligent and could be adjusted via smartphone, so we could create these different lighting conditions.
In the more social open spaces, we had these really beautiful spherical lights just to sort of soften the very industrial ceiling.
What we did was to bring those down really low so they're closer to head height and feel more intimate.
This is definitely the heart of our studio. Over here we have the couch by Oscar Dole for Cave Home. It is great, but we spice it up with some bright cushions from Melbourne brand Omari. We also have this quirky rug from a really interesting collaboration between Portuguese brand Ger Rugs and Pascal Hain. The pink chair next to the couch is also from Dow Jones, and the shelving unit behind the couch is the Shibu L shelf from Plyroom. We also have this gorgeous drawing from Melbourne-based artist Damon Kowalski. And on the shelf there are some more of the Gin and Apathy models, along with the folky funky Vista Holograph ceramic piece. And finally this extraordinary lilac and floral vase made by Melbourne industrial designers and maker Nicole Lawrence in collaboration with Melbourne florist Hattie Molloy.
The main sort of social space is pretty flexible so that you could still move the meeting pod when you wanted to for events, but also have a space for maybe more informal meetings.
Yeah, especially in summertime, we can just open this huge garage door and we just hang out here and have a beer or something. And of course, our powerhouse producer, Lindsay and Elizabeth, called for our Never Too Small book. They also put a lot of their touches here and really make the space more welcoming and, such a fun place to work. While we love to showcase the best design from all over the world on Never Too Small, we draw so much inspiration from artists, designers and makers in our local community here in Melbourne. So we wanted to share some of that inspiration here. Many of the things in our studio are designed, made or curated by our neighbors or in the suburb next to us. We are extremely lucky to be in an area surrounded by so many talented and creative people.
This episode is brought to you by DotSpace. DotSpace is the web address for your big idea. Our DotSpace is NTS.space, our new office and co-work space, the home of Never Too Small. So, if you're a startup, photographer, blogger, or maybe a YouTube channel, like us, consider DotSpace for your next project. Creative domains for creative souls. Thanks for watching. To receive updates on our latest episodes, please subscribe and click the notification bell. And if you're an architect or designer with a project we could feature, please share it with us at nevertoosmall.com/submissions.